Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 36 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing this fine Friday?
I'm doing well. We have a crappy slate of games to talk about, most of which don't matter. But there's a couple in there that matter. And it could, right now, before we came on, I'll let you guys behind the curtain. Me and Shane were kind of complaining about this week's games, which I'm sure we'll do on the air, and the schedule and a lot of it not mattering. But if we get a couple upsets, some things start making it more interesting throughout the day on Sunday. And hopefully that's what happens. And hopefully something happens to inject some life into this week 18. And it's kind of just another example why we probably should have kept it at 17 weeks.
Yeah, we've got teams going into this week eliminated, knowing their coaches are about to get fired, which that happens in week 17 too. But we've got teams sitting starters. We thought about sitting our starting hosts on this podcast and sending in the practice squad, but we couldn't do that to you guys. So I won't say we've got a great show lined up for you, but we do have a show lined up for you. It'll probably be shorter than normal today as we kind of run through these week 18 games, a lot of which are meaningless in terms of the playoffs. But before we do get to that, this is out live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. We're still having issues with Facebook, but if you are watching live, drop us some comments or even some questions in the comments. We'd love to interact with you guys. I put out a plea for a mailbag, knowing this would be a little shorter show. So we've got a couple fan questions, but we can always add more on the fly. So be sure you do that on Apple Podcasts. It's on there. You can give us a 5-star rating or review. Somebody pointed out to me that the last episode did not upload correctly. Like the last 10 minutes got cut off. So that should be rectified now. If you listen to the last episode and it just cut off mid-sentence, if you go re-download that, it should be there if you want to catch the wrap-up of that show. But, Mark, let's dive into it. We've got the Eagles and Dallas playing on Saturday night. Now, the Eagles don't really have anything to play for. They could move up to the 6th seed potentially, but they can't win the division. They can't get a home playoff game, and they don't even control their own fate in terms of matchups. It's kind of out of their hands with games that are being played on Sunday. So this isn't even a scenario where they play Sunday night and they can determine who they want to play, whether they need to win or lose. It's just a total shot in the dark. And in fact, you could argue, and I'm sure that we will, that the Eagles would be better off losing this game because it gets them a more likely matchup with the Rams or the Cardinals than the Bucs. Now, Mike McCarthy has said Dallas is playing their starters. They don't really have anything to play for either. If they had won last week, I wonder if they would be playing those starters but they don't want to go into the playoffs off of a loss like that and then sitting starters. So McCarthy says they're going to play the starters. The Eagles aren't sure. Sirianni is kind of beat around the bush, or I guess we could say the flower all week. I don't know. What do you think the Eagles are going to play, guys?
Absolutely not. I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. So I don't have a long-winded answer for that, but hopefully they're they have some common sense. I think common sense tells you that they shouldn't. So you hope that they won't.
I saw they activated Jason Kelce off the COVID list, which makes me think they're at least going to put him out there the first snap to keep his consecutive games started streak alive. Because really, other than that, there'd be no reason to pull him off of there because now he's going to count as a roster spot. So I don't think they'll play the starters. I know Devonta Smith said he wants to play. I mean, players always want to play. And, you sort of have to have the adults in the room, the coaches, to do what's best at some point in time. And what's best for the Eagles is not to risk injury in a game that doesn't matter. And so I would look for them to rest as many starters as possible, which brings us to the offensive line. You would imagine that Lane Johnson wouldn't play. You would imagine that Jason Kelce wouldn't play in this game. But do you think the Eagles play Jordan Mailata in this one?
I hope not. Honestly, I hope no one that we would feel like going into next week that we would be without. I would hope that we play none of those people. And anyone that you want to put on that list, I think it's probably, if we take the time to make it right here, it's probably Jalen Hurts, whoever your top 2 healthy running backs are. I don't even know at this point necessarily. Obviously Devontae. I think you can play Quez and Ward and Rager and Jay Jaw and get them reps. I don't think
they
you
all
have to sit any
stink,
of them.
so it doesn't really matter.
I don't think you have to sit any of them. So it's really just the quarterback, the running backs, Devontae, Goddard. I would say every starting offensive lineman should sit personally. Maybe, I think you have to sit Dickerson too. Obviously, with his propensity to get injured in the past, you wouldn't want him playing a meaningless game. So,
how thin in general the Eagles are at offensive guard if somebody were to go down.
Absolutely, yeah. And the same goes on the defensive side. I wouldn't want to see Cox, Hargrave, Josh Sweat out there. You can let Derek Barnett play. I wouldn't want to see Darius Slay. I wouldn't want to see Avante. I wouldn't want to see McLeod probably. I'd probably want all of those guys sitting.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, which brings us to two interesting guys you could keep an eye on in this game. Would be Andre Dillard starting at left tackle, who he played a little bit early in the year. He's obviously not as good as Jordan Mailata. That's why he's not the starter. But in terms of trade bait, he bolstered his value a little bit with his playing left tackle in the middle of the year. I'd love to see him play and have a good game, and maybe the Eagles be able to get something for him in the offseason, because I don't value a backup offensive tackle that can only play the left side. If Lane Johnson goes down, I want the backup to be able to play right tackle, not have to shift Mailata over. So, I'd like to see a good showing from Dillard, maybe boost his value a little bit. And Gardner Minshew, a guy who the Eagles gave up a 6th-round pick for, and he obliterated the Jets in the one game he got. We had the report come out that after that game, I don't know if you saw this, that supposedly he went into Sirianni's office and asked him what it would take for him to be the starter now. And I saw a lot of people reacting to that, but for me, I was like, I respect the confidence. Like, you want a guy that feels like he should be starting. And as long as it's not going to cause problems for the team, which it obviously hasn't, I respect it. But obviously he's a guy that wants to start. And if he could come out behind a backup offensive line and play well against the Cowboys, the Eagles would have the potential to move him for something maybe in the offseason, maybe a 4th or, even up into a 3rd, a day 2 pick, which would be phenomenal return on something like that. So that's the two most exciting things for me to watch going into this game is if we can boost the trade value of some backups. What about you?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of Eagles fans going into this week confused, should we root for us? Should we root for the Cowboys? And what do we want to happen outside of that? The nice thing is, I guess you could say that the bad thing, you mentioned it already, the fact that we're playing the night before, you kind of do have to just look at it as all of the possible scenarios. So I thought it'd be helpful to bring up this chart, which I'll zoom in on a little bit so it's a little bit more visible here.
Well, while you zoom in on that, Mr. Crockpot chimed in the comments and wants to know, why is Peter Pan always flying? It's because he never lands.
Ha 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 ha.
I always appreciate the dad jokes more than Mark does.
Twitter is not being very helpful right now with me trying to zoom in, but so I guess we can just get rid of this. That's my bad. But
here, send me that and I'll get it pulled up.
I sent it to you in your Twitter Twitter DMs. But really, the scenario that I'm personally rooting for is us avoiding Tampa Bay. So I'll be rooting for us to lose on Saturday, because I think that the most likely scenario laid out on this long list of scenarios that Shane's hopefully about to put up, for me, the most likely one to avoid Tampa Bay is us getting the Rams. And the way that would happen is for us to lose to Dallas, for the Rams to beat San Fran, and for New Orleans to lose to the Falcons. Really, the most unlikely outcome there is New Orleans losing to the Falcons, because the other two outcomes are favored. The Cowboys are favored to beat us, and the Rams are favored to beat the Niners. So hopefully Vegas is right on those two things. And then all you have to root for, if you're an Eagles fan that doesn't want to play Tom Brady in the playoffs, would be Atlanta to beat New Orleans. And New Orleans is not an unbeatable team. It's Taysom Hill and a bunch of nobodies out there besides Alvin Kamara. So I think that is the most likely scenario to root for if you want to root against playing against Tom Brady.
Which leads me into, I did put out a plea for fan questions for this one. hoping we could fill up a little bit of a mailbag here. And one of the two questions I got was, who should the Eagles want to face? And I know you and I both think the same thing on this, but why don't you go ahead and talk about that first?
Yeah, it's the Rams. And me and Shane are, we come on here and I think we talk about things on a pretty complex level with football. I don't think that it's a lot of the simpleton football talk you'll hear out there, but sometimes all that matters is the quarterback. And I'm not saying all that matters is the quarterback, but the difference between I'll move this down for a second. The difference between playing against Tom Brady and playing against Matthew Stafford nullifies the rest of that matchup. And, I'm as respectful of Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey as anybody. I think they're two of the top 5 players on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL, probably. So I think the Rams are really good. Before the year, I've said it before, but they were my Super Bowl pick. I still have futures on them to win the Super Bowl. But I just don't believe in those futures anymore, and I don't believe in this team anymore from what I've seen with Matthew Stafford in some of these recent games, and especially the turnover-prone football he's playing, and especially how turnover-prone he is within his own 30. Like, these pick sixes, a lot of the times when you'll see guys having issues with picks or specifically issues with pick sixes, it's a lot of unluckiness. Like, I think when Patrick Mahomes was going through a turnover stretch, I think a lot of that, if you go back and watch, were balls that were maybe not perfect, but were hitting receivers in the hands and bouncing off perfectly for some picks. Go back and watch the Matthew Stafford picks. They're not unlucky. They're a guy making a bad decision, throwing it out on his own 10 or 15 yard line. And most of the pick sixes are like untouched. The guy just walks 15, 20 yards unopened into the end zone. And, if Matthew Stafford throws a pick six in a playoff game, which if you look at how often he's done it this year, it's 4 out of 16 games. So that's 25% of the time. If there's a 25% chance that Matthew Stafford's going to throw a pick six, I'll take that 25% over playing any other team in the playoffs, because the Eagles are going to need plays like that to happen. The Eagles are going to need things to happen to beat one of these more talented teams on the road. So I look at Matthew Stafford as a potential equalizer in that way.
So I put out a poll on my Twitter earlier in the week, and I asked who people wanted the Eagles to face. And I was surprised it was pretty even. It was 22% Dallas, 26% Tampa Bay, 28% Arizona, and 24% the Rams. And those are the 4 teams that the Eagles could potentially face. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of my thoughts on each one. So let's talk about Dallas first, because this is who we play this week. Dallas is a division rival. Obviously, anything can happen in those games. They're very well aware of each other. Michael Gallup going down last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, really hurts the Cowboys offense. But this is a Cowboys offense that can put up points in bunches. Now, Dak Prescott, I don't know, he's looked a little off lately, but I don't trust that. Like, the Cowboys are a real boomer bust team, I feel like. They have the weapons that if they're on, you can't beat them in a shootout. And their defense is very opportunistic with turnovers. They've had a lot of turnover luck this year. I think it's the type of matchup where you could go beat them or you could get blown out by them. It could go either way because it's a divisional game. For Tampa Bay, they're beat up. They've got Leonard Fournette with the injury. They've got Godwin's out. They've got Mike Evans is coming back, but he's still a little beat up. They've got a really stout run defense, but at the end of the day, they've got Tom Brady. And Tom Brady has made a living in his career, the greatest quarterback of all time, by sitting back, by dissecting the defense, by taking the underneath throws that they give him. Well, that's a huge weakness in terms of matchups for the Eagles, who like to sit back in that soft zone coverage and rally and tackle and make you go on a drive. Brady will do it. He'll flawlessly execute a 15-play drive to go score. I don't want any part of Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs. And so for me, it comes down to the Rams and the Cardinals. The Cardinals, obviously, they don't have as good of a coach as the Rams do. I think Cliff Kingsbury holds that team back, but they've got Kyler Murray. And Murray adds extra stress onto your defense. And I'm not sure that the Eagles' defense matches up well there. They're kind of beat up on offense. They've struggled. They beat the Cowboys, but they lost 3 out of 4 before that. I'd say that's the number 2 team I'd want the Eagles to face, but Kyler Murray's got to scare you. And then, the team that Mark already mentioned that we want to face is the Rams. And yes, they have Aaron Donald. Yes, they have Jalen Ramsey. But the reality is Sean McVay is a coward in big situations. Like, he has made decisions several times in big spots of big regular season games and playoff games that have cost his team games. And I trust that he will continue to do that. I think he's a great coach. I just think he's not aggressive at the right times. And he's the coach I want most making those decisions in the playoffs against us. And it's the Matthew Stafford thing. Whereas Tom Brady will sit back and he'll take the underneath throws that the Eagles are giving up. Matthew Stafford's an aggressive quarterback. He likes to push the ball downfield. He will take those throws into tight windows, and it's why you see him turning the ball over so much. And so despite the fact that you're going to have, Jalen Ramsey shadowing Devonta Smith or maybe even Dallas Goedert in that game, despite the fact you're going to have to block up Aaron Donald, you get the opportunity, a better opportunity than against any other quarterback, to get short fields because of interceptions. And so I view the Eagles' defense as the weakness of the team, not the offense. And I think it's a better matchup to help negate that weakness. And so that's why I want the Rams. I think that's why Mark wants the Rams. And we cross our fingers and hope it happens. But the best chance for that to happen is for the Eagles to lose to Dallas. And I honestly think, I think the team knows this, and I think they're going to be resting starters. We got little boxes from Twitch. Asks, can I safely play Devontae, or will he have a low output?
I'm assuming that means fantasy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that means fantasy, and I definitely would not play Devonta Smith unless you have – if you don't have any other options, then you hope he plays, but I really don't think they're going to play him a whole lot. And if they do, I don't think it'll be a full complement of the team out there.
If he does play, he'll probably do well, though, with Minshew. It'll probably, especially with Dallas, probably resting some guy. Oh, if Chase is your other. Oh, wait, Chase is probably, they're resting too. I don't know. Playing fantasy in week 18 is dumb. Tell your commissioner to finish it a week earlier, little boxes. But I would probably say Bateman, actually, which is funny to say because he's definitely the worst of the three. But I would probably.
But the Ravens definitely need to win. So they're. Yeah, and Cincinnati we know is resting starters, so I wouldn't do Bateman. Nice. Or excuse me, I wouldn't do Chase.
He said, "I'm dumb. I'm sorry. You're playing fantasy. I'm not calling you dumb. I don't think you set the rules up. But playing fantasy in week 18, this is why you don't do it. And it's like there's a million people resting.
Yeah, you definitely don't want your Super Bowl in fantasy to be the last week of the regular season when teams are going to be resting, but not ideal.
That's difficulty. Hey, if you enjoy it, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair for you. Yeah. What were we talking about before that? Oh man, I had a point.
We're talking about why we want to play the Rams.
Oh yeah, okay. So I wanted to simplify this a little bit. Let's assume, because I think you can assume this, Tampa is going to beat Carolina. I think that's pretty fair to assume. Actually, this is a fun stat. The 3 times that Matt Rule has played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've lost by, or the Carolina Panthers have lost by 20 plus. So Tampa has taken care of business against Carolina, and those are in games that Carolina, cares about. And this is a game that they don't care about, evidenced by the fact that they're throwing Sam Darnold back out there to the Wolves. So I think Tampa wins that game. I just can't see Tampa losing to the Panthers. So if you eliminate the possibilities of Carolina winning from that scenario, there's only 2 teams we can face, and it's Tampa Bay and it's LA. So that where I was coming from with giving the team that I want to face, I'm not even really considering Arizona and Dallas as realistic possibilities because I really do think Tampa will be able to win this week. So that is why I'm focusing on my scenario, which would allow us to play the Rams, which is the Rams beating the Niners, the Cowboys beating the Eagles, and the Falcons beating the Saints. And he says it doesn't matter who the Eagles play, LOL. That's fine. A lot of people are going to say that we're going to lose to no matter who we play. I would say that, if a quarterback, if you can play a team that has a quarterback who has propensities to throw pick sixes, then that opens up the chance to almost anybody. The Rams almost lost to the Ravens with, Tyler Huntley and a lot of people hurt last week. So they needed to have a 75-yard drive to win that game. I think we're better than the Ravens are right now. So I don't think it's impossible to beat the Rams.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's what we're hoping for. We got Pedro chiming in the YouTube chat, says, "Hey guys, cheers from Brazil." Welcome to the show, Pedro. Glad that you are here all the way from Brazil. Hopefully you're a Birds fan down there, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't going to say that.
It's always interesting. I know there was a random guy that in somewhere in Europe that was talking football with me the other day, and I was just like, how did you get onto that? Because I don't know. I'm always interested in people overseas, how they got into American football, because it's not the most international sport. But glad you're here, Pedro. Hope you enjoy the show.
That's awesome.
So, okay, my other question also that came in also centered around the Eagles, Mark. So I'm going to toss this one to you, and then we can kind of move on. But had somebody DM me on Twitter, and they asked, what has Hurts improved on the most this year? They said, hear people talking about him improving. What has he improved on the most? So what's your perception of Hurts development throughout the year?
That's a good question. It's tough. Do I think he's developed in one area specifically, like leaps and bounds? Not really. I guess I'm going to use a cop-out answer a little bit and say that Jalen Hurts' best development was getting an NFL wide receiver, and it was getting Devontae Smith. That's going to, that's a cop-out answer, but what we were seeing out of Jalen Hurts last year was based on what he was playing with, which was not an NFL complement of receivers. We did not have a single starting receiver on that roster last year. So I think that it's been you're able to evaluate him a bit more fairly because he has at least one legitimate option at receiver, and because Dallas Goedert has taken a bit of a leap into being one of the better pass catching tight ends in football. So I think that those Goedert taking a leap and Devontae Smith's appearance in the offense, and I guess just having a healthy O-line in front of you. It's not a how he's developed, but how the Eagles have been able to develop around him, I guess, is the strongest development for Jalen Hurts.
I came into the year saying there was like a 10 to 15% chance that Jalen Hurts developed into the franchise quarterback. Now I pretty much think, they've got to give him another year because I saw growth this year. I still would say it's only like a 60-ish% chance that he's their long-term franchise guy. But the biggest growth I've seen in him is his willingness to stand in pockets rather than bail out if his first read's not open. I think it's something we've seen throughout the year where he went from one read to running to, now he's got a read and a second read, maybe before he starts to run. Now, I still want to see him be able to look at a field and realize his concept to one side's not open and bounce to the backside. And I don't see that very often. You see it every once in a while. I think that's a big room for him to continue to grow. But if you're a mobile quarterback, you don't necessarily have to have that. As long as you can read a couple of options and then get out of there, which I think he's done a good job of doing. He's taken care of the football well, and he's done a better job of not just locking onto one guy and then bailing from the pocket like I felt like he did real early in the year. So that's the biggest thing that I've seen from him that's been encouraging to me over the last couple months.
I guess I think he's done a great job sensing pressure, especially lately. So I guess you could add that onto like a specific thing for me. But yeah, I actually think that you might have given him a little bit more of a chance than I would to be the franchise quarterback still at this point, which is surprising because I think I've been probably the more positive guy on Hurts on this pod, but I would still put it like right at 50-50. I mean, I think he'll be the guy next year, but I think I would say Jalen Hurts being the 2023 quarterback is like 50-50 directly. Like, I think that is as 50-50 as it gets. And we got a couple comments from Dives here. I love that throw to Goedert last week where he stood tall in the pocket and threw a dime. It was to Goedert on the sideline. I remember that throw. That was a solid one. It seems like some of his best throws seem to be to Goedert. Like, it seems like when he throws it to Devontae always has to make a nice play on the ball. Goedert gets these great dimes from Jalen. It seems like a little update from Pedro, the Brazilian fan, I should say. He said, haha, yes, started cheering for the Sixers and then automatically for the Eagles. That's awesome. Trust the process. Go Birds. And then Joe Chick, one of our most frequent commenters, said, do you guys feel like the NFL adding this week 18 was supposed to bring more excitement to the last week? I feel it's like a disappointment compared to last year. Great stuff as always, guys. And the funny thing about that is I don't think that the NFL were thinking too much when they added the extra week. I think all they wanted to do was just add an extra week of money. Yeah, exactly. Shane's doing the money Manziel sign. I think that they just wanted to add more money. But the thing that it actually did, and to your point, Joe, this week is less exciting than it normally is in week 17. It gives an extra game for teams to separate themselves in the standings. So if there's a game less, there's going to be more parity and there's going to be more teams fighting for less spots. So it actually, if anything, it did promote kind of a boring last week, I think.
There's a reason. I mean, in college football, every single week, every game matters because if you lose one, you might be done. Whereas the NFL, 17-game season, you can lose a few games and it's not that big a deal. Well, you make it an 18-game season, and the longer the season drags on, not that it's ever going to get to the point of like baseball, but if you're a diehard baseball fan, you probably don't even watch half of your team's games because there's just so many, and it really doesn't even matter. I mean, you're going to lose 60 games anyways, so who cares? And so, yeah, I think it was about money, and it's always going to be a little less exciting just because there's an extra week for separation. I do feel like, and I don't think it's probably just because of the extra game, I do just feel like the playoffs are a little more set up like they're going to be than they typically are. Like next year, week 18 might be a little more exciting. This year, it's just kind of the way it fell. I think there's just not a lot left up in the air.
Yeah, I said it before we came on, but there's a couple scenarios that could have made this week a lot more interesting. If the Saints had another win, it'd be, the Eagles would be still fighting, and if the I'm trying to think of the Browns and the Ravens, that game, the whole AFC North could have been a lot more interesting if a couple of those teams got a couple more wins. There's a lot of things that just kind of broke in a weird way, so that teams weren't able to be in a spot where anything matters in the last week. Who would have thought Seattle would be 6-9 or 7-9, wherever they are at this point? So, I think it is just a bit of kind of unluckiness that led to this week. But like we said, if you add an extra week, there's always going to be another game for separation.
Yeah. Mr. Crockpot chimes in and says the Eagles need to get Devonta Smith 125 yards and then sit him down tomorrow night. He's so close to 1,000. Not worth it. I don't even want him on the field personally, but yeah, we mentioned that a little bit earlier. So, all right, let's throw it around the NFL here, and we'll probably breeze through some of these games because there's just not a lot going on here. But we start off with the other Saturday game. We've got Kansas City traveling to Denver. With a win, Kansas City can keep the pressure on Tennessee. Tennessee would have to beat Houston in Houston in order to keep the 1 seed. The NFL really did the Chiefs a disservice by putting this game on Saturday. This is the type of game that, if they were playing after Tennessee, they would already know their fate and they wouldn't play starters. Or if they were playing at the same time, they'd see that Tennessee's up by 20 at halftime and they'd probably sit their guys down. But there can't be any scoreboard watching. So I fully expect Kansas City to go hard here. I mean, they've got to win. They've got to keep the pressure on Tennessee just on the off chance that Tennessee lays an egg against Houston, who already beat them once this year. But that was in like the first post-Derrick Henry game. So I think Kansas City plays in this game. And if they play, they're going to demolish Denver, who is just ready to get to the offseason.
Yeah, early on in this week, and I sent the tweet out, I said, if you like the Chiefs at -9.5, you should take it now because the line's going to go up. And the line went up. The line's to 11.5 now. I'd still take it. I still think the Chiefs win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. But the Broncos are done. Vic Fangio's done. This is the last time Drew Lock will ever start an NFL game, and it's the last time Vic Fangio will ever coach an NFL game as a head coach. So you can't pass up on one last opportunity to fade both. And this is a funny little, I don't know if this is going to be bad if I've already done this bit on this podcast on Tuesday, but if Drew Lock, he's going to fail and he's going to be out of the league in a couple of the years, and he's going to be like, man, if I just went somewhere that didn't have Vic Fangio, I would have been a good NFL quarterback. And Vic Fangio is going to be telling his hunting buddies or whatever Vic Fangio does. He's going to be like, man, if I ever got a quarterback, we could have won the Super Bowl in Denver. And it's like, the thing is, you guys both kind of suck at your jobs. So Broncos are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5, 2-5 against the spread in their last 7. Chiefs are 6-1 against the spread in their last 7. These two teams were kind of at the same standing level 7 weeks ago. And they have went in completely opposite directions. So like you said, the Chiefs have no opportunity to scoreboard watch. They're going to care about this game because it's the only option they have. And I think they win easily.
All right. Moving on, Chicago at Minnesota. Really nothing to play for either team here. This could be a lot of lasts, though. It could be the last game for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. It could be the last game for Zimmer. It's definitely, supposedly definitely the last game for Nagy, although now Nagy's saying that no one's told him that. So I have no idea. We'll keep the Bears fans in our prayers if Nagy still has a job on Monday. But what do you have in this game?
Who cares? I don't even know. I'll take Minnesota. I wish they were playing Justin Fields. Justin Fields got COVID. Or else if they would have won this week with Justin Fields, Matt Nagy would have been the first coach in NFL history to win 3 straight weeks with 3 different quarterbacks, and that would have been a fun little stat for Matt Nagy to ride out on into irrelevance.
I didn't realize that. That would have been really funny though. So I'll take Minnesota too. I mean, they've got the better quarterback, as bad as those words taste, talking about Kirk Cousins. I think they'll win this one. They're at home, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
So moving on to the Panthers at the Buccaneers. We've kind of already talked about this one. I think the Buccaneers win this game. I think they're just trying to get out healthy into the playoffs here.
Yeah, I used my fun stat already. Bucs have beaten Matt Rule by 20 plus 3 times. They're going to do it a 4th.
All right. New England at Miami. Now, New England doesn't really have anything to play for here. They've clinched the playoff.
They could.
Do they? Well, they've clinched the division, but they've got a home field game. I guess they can still play for an opponent matchup though.
So they can get the 1 seed still. The Patriots. A lot of stuff would have to happen, but they can still win the division, and they're going to be rooting for the Jets to beat the Bills, and they'll obviously need to beat the Dolphins. But the Dolphins are playing for nothing other than maybe Tua's future at this point.
Yeah. Miami's offense is just atrocious. It's been awful, and I don't see New England's not the team that you want to play when you're struggling on offense. So really all Miami can do is run RPOs. That's the only thing that they do semi well. And there is no coach in the NFL that's better at taking away the one thing you do well than Bill Belichick. And so I think it's going to be, Miami's got a good defense. New England has a rookie quarterback. Doesn't matter. Miami offense isn't going to be able to do anything in this game.
Tua to New Orleans. Get the movement started now. But there's a comment here from Squidward Tentacles. Possible last home games for Kelsey and/or Barnett tomorrow. Well, Barnett, yes, thank God. Kelsey, you hope not. You hope he's coming back next year, and he does seem rejuvenated. So,
I think at this point, the only thing that can stop Jason Kelsey is his will to play. I mean, he's still he's still probably the best center in the league at 34. Yeah. He's healthy. I think he started 100 and some odd games in a row, so he stays healthy. He's still at 34. He's still the most athletic center in the league. I don't see any sign of him slowing down. I know he's kind of flirted with retirement since the Super Bowl. I legit think he could play another 2 to 3, 4 years at an elite level. And so you hope he sticks around. I'd love it if he'd just come out and say, I'm going to play till I'm 38. So we quit having to do this every end of a season. But I really hope he's back. I really don't think Barnett will be.
No, I agree.
Okay. Moving on, we've got New Orleans at Atlanta. And by the way, if you're in the comments, you can keep dropping us questions as we go along. We'll answer those for you guys. But New Orleans at Atlanta. New Orleans needs a win, and they need a 49er loss to get into the preseason. So let's talk about this game first, and we'll get to the 49ers game. Can New Orleans pull off the victory in Atlanta?
Yeah, for sure. I think New Orleans is favored by, I actually don't know the line here, where it's at now. It's 4 or 5 points, something in that range. This is a 50-50 game to me. It just depends on how motivated Atlanta is. I know Kyle Pitts has been in and out of practice this week, so that'll matter. It honestly, this game will come down to if Arthur Smith and the Falcons care about this week, and if the Falcons come out fighting for Arthur Smith, and it's still so young in his reign, I think that they will, and so I think this will be a close game, decided by a field goal in classic Falcons fashion. So I hope that the Falcons. Obviously, I laid out my scenario earlier. I hope that the Falcons win. I don't have a concrete opinion on this game, so I'll go with my heart and I'll pick the Falcons.
Yeah, I like the Falcons too. I mean, we've talked about Matt Ryan before. Matt Ryan is infinitely better than any quarterback that New Orleans has. And so I think that's got to give him the edge as long as Pitts plays and as long as they are motivated to win, which you can never tell in a game like this. But I think Atlanta finds a way to get it done at home and help the Eagles out.
It's definitely a rivalry. Joe Ciccoletti is a Falcons fan. He said, "Easy with that Atlanta Falcons talk. We need the higher draft pick." I'm sure if you're a Falcons fan, there's no incentive to want to win that game. But the Saints did put a parade. When they had Mardi Gras after the Falcons blew 28-3 to the Patriots, there was a parade float. About the young and the ringless with Matt Ryan and Julio and those guys making fun of them for blowing a 28-3 lead. So. Maybe you can spoil the Saints' playoff chances here.
I feel like in a division game, even if you're out of the playoffs, having a chance to spoil, even if it's a slim shot that another division rival gets in, I feel like you're up for that. You're ready to go. So
to be fair,
they'll be ready to go, but who knows?
To be fair, that's a little rich coming from us because in week 17 last year, we had a chance to be the spoiler for an NFC East team, and we tanked for our draft pick, and I was very happy about it. So
that's true.
I guess we're being a little hypocritical.
That's true, but I will say this: do the Eagles bigger rivals with the Giants or the football team?
That's true.
That's
very true.
I guess, and I don't know the lay of the land as much with how NFC South fans feel about each other, but
that's a good point. That's a great point.
I can promise you that given the chance, if the tables were flipped last year and the Eagles were playing the Giants, I would have been pulling for them to win that game.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Green Bay at Detroit. Green Bay has clinched the 1 seed. They should not be playing any starters. They should be playing Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers should have already had surgery on his pinky toe. I don't know that any of those things are going to happen. Regardless, though, the Jordan Love-led Green Bay Packers would beat the Detroit Lions. And so if Aaron Rodgers plays, this should be a blowout.
I have no idea what to think of this. I'll take Green Bay no matter what, I guess. But Aaron Rodgers he said he wants to play, and he said, good luck to Coach LaFleur for trying to talk me out of playing, which is like, what an idiot in my opinion. But whatever, football players want to play, whatever. So this I hope this is Jordan Love versus Tim Boyle. I think that would be the most fun outcome for this game.
Yeah. Okay, Indianapolis at Jacksonville in a game that does have some intrigue here. So the Colts have a win in their end game. All they have to do is beat the lowly Jags. But, and I shared this on the review show earlier in the week, the Colts have not won a game in Jacksonville since 2014. And so the Jags have had their number at home. And so Eagles fans can doubly hope that Jacksonville wins this game, because if Jacksonville wins this game, the Colts don't make the playoffs, which means that their pick obviously would be higher that the Eagles own. So Eagles fans should be rooting for the Jags hardcore in this game. Now, I don't know how you lose to the Jags if you're the Colts. Just hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor 40 times and don't let Carson Wentz screw anything up here. Jonathan Taylor comes into the game needing 266 yards to get to 2,000 yards. The Jags have allowed 227 rushing yards before. So it's possible. And so that's my thing. If the Colts are going to win this game, I want Taylor to get to 2K.
I have no actual reason for thinking this, but it does feel like the Jags winning is what the NFL is going to need for Sunday to be interesting. So I almost want to take Jacksonville, but Indy should win this game easily. Jacksonville's terrible. They have no redeeming qualities. It doesn't even seem like they've gotten really any boost from a new coaching staff at all. The last week was pathetic against the Patriots. So I'm sure that Indy trounces them. I'm sure Jonathan Taylor runs for a ton of yards. So I'll say Indy wins, but I'll be rooting for Jacksonville to kind of upset the apple cart and to make Sunday interesting. And I have a funny scenario to pitch you, because all the AFC 6 or 7 seed talk is about Indy and then the Pittsburgh Baltimore game, kind of. So I just wanted to pitch a scenario. If Pittsburgh loses to Baltimore, which I think they're a 6-point dog, and if the Colts lose to Jacksonville, the Raiders are in no matter what, because the Ravens need a Chargers loss, which would force the Chargers out and would put the Ravens in. That's the only way the Ravens get in. But if the Chargers beat the Raiders after, let's say that the Ravens win, the Jaguars win, and the Chargers win, the Chargers and Raiders both get into the playoffs. So what the NFL thought they were doing with Chargers Raiders was they thought no matter what, it was a play and you're in, like a playoff game for the playoffs. But there's a scenario where Oakland or Las Vegas goes into that Sunday night game knowing that they can lose and be in.
Yeah. So could be a great last game of the season, similar to what wasn't the Eagles the Sunday night game last year on week 17 when they phoned it in? Yeah, it could happen 2 years in a row, which would be hilarious.
It'd be very funny.
All right. Well, speaking of giving up, we go to Washington football team at the New York Giants, where Joe Judge coached teams never give up. Unfortunately, they don't score either. They've only scored over 13 points in one of the last 7 weeks. I think Washington rolls in this game.
You just stole one of my stats there. I have the Giant. I'm going to be taking the Giants team total under 15 because they scored over 13 once in the last 7 weeks. Their offense is absolutely dreadful.
They're starting Jake Fromm.
They are. It's not Glennon.
You know what they should do? I mean, last week they had negative 10 passing yards. So this week they should just go out in the shotgun with Saquon Barkley back there and direct snap to him every play and just see how many rushing yards they can get.
He can throw it a little bit, I'm sure. Have him throw a couple. But yeah, I like Washington -6.5 in this game too. That's actually one of my bets on the board. And it's a lot like the Denver bet. This is probably the last chance you'll ever have to bet against Joe Judge, and it's definitely the last chance you'll have to bet against whoever the Giants are throwing out there at quarterback. But more importantly, this might be Taylor Heineke's last stand. I don't know, who knows what the future holds for Washington. Heineke played well against the Eagles last week. I don't think anyone told him that they were pretty much out of the playoff race no matter what. So as the last remaining member of the Heineke Hive, I will be riding. And the reason that I really like this is because Joe Judge took some shots at Ron Rivera and the Washington football team in that press conference that we talked about on the review, where he said they're not some clown show organization punching each other on the sidelines. So I think Washington will come out with a little fight after that comment. And I guess the New York media has asked Joe Judge to comment on that comment, and he has refused to. So, that was clearly something he just said, that he was angry and now he regrets it and doesn't want to be like bulletin board material or anything.
He also, the NFL no longer requires coaches to sit down with members of the opposing team's media, but everybody does it if there's a request. And there was a request from the Washington media to have a conference call with Joe Judge, and he turned it down. So just
That's hilarious.
Yeah, just absolute coward.
The worst.
Anyways, I sure hope it's not the last time to bet against Joe Judge. I'd love for him to get a lifetime contract. I have a question for you that just popped into my head while you were talking, though.
I got it.
Would you trade Gardner Minshew for Taylor Heineke to be the Eagles' backup quarterback?
Yeah, Heineke's better. I think
I would too, and not necessarily because I think he's a better passer, but I think his mobility
That's true.
Lets you have the Ravens sort of option with Tyler Huntley backing up Lamar Jackson. You don't run the same offense for Gardner Minshew that you do for Jalen Hurts, but even though Heineke's 3 years older, he's a good scheme fit for kind of what the Eagles do, and you could run that same offense if Hurts misses a game. So that's just something that popped into my head. I don't think either team would say no to that. Like, I think Washington would view Minshew as their starter, and I think the Eagles would view that as an upgrade for their scheme for a backup.
I think Washington will probably want to swing higher than that, and they'll probably keep Heineke around if he's just like a, I don't know. I don't know what effect he would have on the locker room. But Washington, the reason Ron Rivera is not on the hot seat is because Washington needs like as much continuity as possible. So I guess that's like the one thing I'd say. But I imagine they will be drafting a quarterback. I think that I can't see a vet really wanting to go to Washington. Like, they're not going to get a Rodgers or a Wilson or Derek Carr or someone else like that could come available. So I imagine their path is probably taking a Matt Corral or a Carson Strong or a Sam Howell or taking someone who they either plan on playing right away or maybe a Malik Willis where you play him behind Heineke and you let him sit for a year or something. I imagine that'll be the route they take.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Tennessee at Houston. Tennessee needs to win, assuming that Kansas City wins over Denver to retain the 1 seed. Houston won the first meeting, but this was right after Derrick Henry went down. The Titans were still trying to find their stride. Although they're not perfectly in stride yet, they have figured a few things out. And I think they win this game easily.
Yeah, the Titans have a chance to finish out a rock solid Mike Vrabel Coach of the Year campaign, in my opinion, and this would be the most improbable one seed I can really ever remember. I'd be really impressed with Tennessee finishing this off. I think they do it. I'll take the -10.5. I think that's down to -10. I would still take that. I think the Titans come out fired up. Titans are 3-1 against the spread in their last 4 and 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. I really thought this team, I think we both did when Derrick Henry went down. Me and you are both not running back value guys or guys that value running backs very highly. But, with what Derrick Henry had done for Tennessee over the last couple of years, not just this year to open the year, you really did think that was kind of ripping the heart out of what was the Titans team. And it wasn't the case. They really fought hard, and you really hope for a team like that and for a fan base like that. I've got no skin in the game, but you'd really hope that Derrick Henry looks like Derrick Henry when he comes back. I'm not sure if you might know better than me if he's playing this week. I know they activated him. I don't know if he's playing or if they're getting him ready to play, but if he can look 90-95% like himself this year, that would make the playoffs in the AFC a whole lot more interesting because Tennessee would become even more legitimate, I think.
Yeah, I think from what I understand that they're activating him to practice. I don't think there's any chance he's playing.
That's what
but he has been practicing. So, I'm with you. I think Tennessee wins this game, and I think it could be interesting in the playoffs if Henry comes back in form. But we'll wait and see on that. He's got a couple weeks, assuming they win this game. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. The most interesting thing in this game is that I took the Steelers under 8.5 wins, and they sit at 8 wins right now. I tweeted out my victory lap that I hit every one of my over-under team total bets that I made, all 4 of them during the preseason. I tweeted that out last Monday, and I forgot that the Steelers played on Monday Night Football. And so I saw they had 7 wins, and I took them under 8.5, and I was like, I already cashed that one. So they won on Monday night. I could lose that bet and retweet myself to Old Takes Exposed if that happens, I guess. But I think Baltimore will win this game. Technically, both of these teams have a shot to make the playoffs. It's just a tremendous long shot. Like, I think Baltimore gets in with a win, a Chargers loss, a Colts loss, and a Dolphins loss or something like that.
You're right on. You got that right. The Steelers just need the Colts to lose, and then they need to win.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens here. I've got Baltimore. I'm pulling for Baltimore for the sake of my bet, but we'll see what happens.
So the funny thing about this is I also have that bet. I also have Steelers under 8.5, but I really completely forget about my futures during the year. And then at the end of the year, I'm always like, oh yeah, I bet that. So I'm glad Shane reminded me of that. So now I don't think I'll bet on Pittsburgh because I was going to. I like the Steelers +6 if that's still the line. I don't know who wins this game, but I think it's going to be 50-50, and I don't really understand why the Ravens will be favored by so many points. So I'll take the Steelers to win, but now I'm hoping that they lose, so me and Shane cash our bets.
Yeah, my 4 preseason bets were Jags under 6.5, Titans over 9, Steelers under 8.5, and Broncos under 8.5.
Yeah, I think I'm right around break even for mine, which is I feel like the only ones I remember are the bad ones. So I have to go look and go remember what were the good ones. But I remember that I liked the Bears and Jags overs, which were not good bets. But I think I had a couple. Well, the Eagles saved me pretty much. That's a big one.
Yeah. Okay, the Jets at the Bills. Buffalo clinches the division with a win. I see no reason to doubt that they're not going to win here. So the Bills against the Jets, that should be a huge mismatch. I think the Bills will kill them.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think the Bills win this game, and they've impressed me as of late. They are better looking at this point in the season than I thought they would be.
All right, Cincinnati at Cleveland. Baker Mayfield is 3-0 in his career against Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow's not going to play, and Cleveland's still probably going to lose to their backup quarterback because he may be better. Actually, I take that back. Baker's not even playing now, though. Baker's shut down. So, yeah, battle of backup quarterbacks. Who cares? I don't.
I'll take the Browns, if not just to, shove it in Baker's face that Keenum probably should have been playing the whole year and might have taken the Browns to the playoffs if he played.
Yeah. Okay, San Francisco at the Rams. This is a win and in game for the 49ers. The question becomes who's going to play quarterback? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Jimmy G with the banged up thumb? I don't know. I don't have a clear sense of who's going to play in that game. I also don't know that it matters. I think the Rams will probably take care of business here. They're essentially playing for the division. If they win, they get the division, which means they're going to get a home playoff game. They're going to be motivated to win this game, and I think they'll take care of business.
The Niners are fighting for their playoff lives. Shanahan has not lost to McVay. I think the Niners win this game, but I'll be staying away. I want the Rams to win, so I don't hope this. But if I want the Rams to win, I guess I hope they play Jimmy G. I think the smart thing to do would be to play Trey Lance. And that goes for if they make the playoffs as well. Like, I think they should be playing Trey Lance at this point. He wasn't perfect last week, but I think you saw in the second half some of the highlight plays that you got excited about in college, and some of the plays that, make you think, oh, maybe this guy's the franchise quarterback. And no one's got tape on this guy. I think that the way to go for San Fran is to basically unleash a new offense on the NFL and hope that it's kind of the similar run that Kaepernick had when he first got injected when no one had tape on him. So I think Trey Lance is the right move personally. And I think if they play Trey Lance, they'll win this game.
They should have been playing Trey Lance 8 weeks ago, so we didn't have to weigh the inexperience thing. But that goes back to my Kyle Shanahan rant on a previous podcast that I won't get into here. So Seattle at Arizona. Arizona clinches the division if they win and the Rams lose. Potentially Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson's last game in Seattle. But I think Arizona takes care of business. They hit the playoffs, feeling good about themselves after beating the Cowboys and the Seahawks back-to-back.
Yeah, I'm really starting to feel like Pete Carroll's going to stay around, I guess. Like, it just feels like there's shockingly no buzz around Pete Carroll, all the buzz around Russell Wilson.
The problem with getting rid of Pete Carroll is he's everything.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
If Carroll's gone, there's a massive power vacuum. Mm-hmm. And so he should be gone, but he has so much power that I don't know if he will, because it's so much you'd have to replace.
He's had the most power in football besides Bill Belichick, and maybe even equal to Bill Belichick for the last however many amount of years that you want to say for Seattle. So it would be a really big adjustment as an organization to lose him. But if they trade Russell Wilson and keep Pete Carroll, it does feel like, what are you doing? If you're going to start new, you should probably start new. So, like we said, I think we said this earlier on in the week, if I was Seattle, I would literally hand over the team to Russell Wilson and say, who do you want? What head coach do you want? And you can pick them.
Yeah. All right. And then that leads us into the Sunday night game, which you already talked about this one a little bit. The NFL tried to set this up. They kind of failed. But you've got the Chargers traveling to Vegas to take on the Raiders. It is a win and in for both teams, except for, some scenarios that would make it not even matter for the Raiders. 4 of the last 5 games between these teams have been 1-score games. So I'm hoping that this comes down to a win and in for both of them, because I'd love to go out seeing a good Sunday night football game instead of just a game where the Raiders phone it in.
Yeah, no, I think it'll end up working out so that they both need to play. But if the Colts lose, I'm pretty sure that if they both tie, they both get in, and that would be a really funny scenario if they both went out there and said, let's just kneel down for 4 hours. The NFL would have a conniption. But
that would be hilarious if
it'd be incredible.
Week 18 Sunday night football was 2 teams that both get in as long as they don't lose, and it was just 3 hours of taking a knee. That'd be hilarious.
And then someone fumbles on a knee with 5 minutes left, and the other team scores, and then they have to start really playing. It's like, oh wait, you screwed us. But yeah, I think it'd be.
Can you imagine the salt that would come out of that division forever if that happened? I can't even imagine. I still you still hear people talk about the Giants fumbling the kneel down against the Eagles all those years ago, and that wasn't even a scenario where you just agreed let's tie this up. But that'd be hilarious. I would love it if I wrote the movie version. That's how it would go. It'd
be incredible. But assuming that both teams are playing. I actually like the Raiders here. I like the Raiders +3 against the Chargers. I'm a Derek Carr stan, and I have a feeling that the public will be very heavy on Justin Herbert and the Chargers. So these are the same Chargers who lost to the Texans 2 weeks ago.
We don't talk about that.
So I don't think that they're unbeatable. What Derek Carr, Rich Bisaccia, and the Raiders have done to even be in this position is so surprising to me. I really thought that their season was over. And I think this is a 50-50 game. I think this is going to come down to the wire like a lot of these two teams games seem to. I think this is a game that the NFL will be happy that they put on Sunday night. I think it comes down to the end of the fourth quarter or maybe even overtime. And a fun little fact here, the kicker with the most game-winning kicks this year in the NFL is Daniel Carlson with 4 game-winning kicks, and I could see him making that a 5th. I like the Raiders to win, but I definitely like them to cover +3 as a home dog. The Raiders can run the ball. Chargers can't stop the run, and with how good Derek Carr has been, I don't think that there's some huge gap between Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, but obviously there is a gap, but I think it will be made up for by the terrible run defense of the Chargers.
I'm pulling for the Chargers because I want to set up that Chargers-Bengals playoff game so we can get our Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert podcast in. And I think if the Chargers make the playoffs, they could make some noise. I don't really feel that way about the Raiders. So if you're a fan of an AFC team, you should be pulling for the Raiders here because I don't think they're much of a threat in the playoffs, whereas I think the Chargers could be. But ultimately, we'll see what happens. These two teams do always play great games. And hopefully the Sunday night game will be as well.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game.
All right. Well, that's going to about wrap up this podcast, our full Week 18 preview. We'll be back next week to break it all down and get you guys ready for the playoffs. But, Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll talk about another game that is going to be a great game, in my opinion, on next Monday. I'm not sure if we'll record before or after this game, but the national championship in college is on Monday, Alabama, Georgia. Bama is a 3-point dog, and I will be going with Alabama +3. I think they win the national championship. I think they cover that +3, obviously. There's a lot of matchups you could talk about where Georgia's better and why it might be a square bet to bet Alabama. But if you want to bet on Stetson Bennett against Bryce Young, and if you want to bet on Kirby Smart against Nick Saban, you could be my guest. I did it a month ago. It didn't go well for me. So I like Alabama to win again against Georgia. And also, Nick Saban is 6-1 in his last 7 as an underdog against the spread, and he's won those 6 outright. And in all of those 6 wins, they've won by double digits. So I like Alabama close, but it'll probably be by more than I think.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 36 of Chalk Talk.
Give me a national championship pick. Give me a pick back. Bama, Georgia.
Okay. It's hard to pick against Alabama.
Yeah.
Georgia, they've got the Vaughned defense and all of that, but it's just hard to pick against Alabama after what they've done. So if I've got to take some, and I'm not touching this game from a gambling perspective, but if I had to, I think Alabama is who you would expect to win, and I'll certainly be pulling for Georgia because I can't stand Alabama's dynasty.
Fair. I'll let you go now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for episode 36 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, even though it was the most meaningless game podcast of all time, all the meaningless games, be sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, wherever you're at. So you don't miss the next episode. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. 5-star reviews are always appreciated. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at @half_TPL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. So for me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.